Hey everybody, it's First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad. Panovich update on our brief little shot of wintry weather tomorrow. Now don't get excited, this is not going to be snow. Most of us are going to see a miserable cold rain. But if you're a traveler, especially right around sunrise tomorrow, north and west of Charlotte, and I'll show you where in a minute, we could see just a bit of ice. And while that's not going to be a big deal, it could be a little slick on a few bridges and overpasses. Let's start with the setup right now, because if you've been outside today, it is cold. Even though it's brilliantly sunny out there, we've got an area of high pressure centered right here. So big H, clockwise flow in the northern hemisphere with high pressure. And you can see the arrows showing the cold, dry air in the lowest levels of the atmosphere getting pushed down into the Carolinas. At the same time, down to our south, you can see clouds and even some precipitation beginning to form down here. This is in the mid and upper levels trying to push north. So there's a battle here. Cold, dry air is heavy, dense, settles near the ground. Warm, humid air is buoyant. It lifts and it tries to go up and over. Now, this is your classic freezing rain setup if this high stays in place. But here's the situation we're going with tomorrow. This high is moving this way while the moisture is moving up. But there's going to be a brief period right over us where we could see potentially some wintry weather. And for that reason, there is a winter weather advisory in effect for all the counties shaded in purple. That includes all of our mountain counties and a good chunk of the foothills in the northwest Piedmont. Now, this is not for a huge impacting event, but again, bridges and overpasses for a couple hours tomorrow morning certainly could be under the threat for a little bit of freezing drizzle or rain. And I'll show you real quickly the area I'm talking about. This is what I'm thinking for accumulation of ice. And again, this area right here to me is the biggest concern overall. I'm a little less concerned down here because I don't think anything's going to stick to the road surfaces. It's just going to be too warm. The ground temperatures are too warm. Near the ground, it's just a little bit too warm. This is mainly going to be in the trees. You might see a little bit of a glistening or maybe even a little bit of a glaze in the trees in a few areas up in here. But up in here, there's enough ice that on bridges and overpasses, we could see some issues coming up tomorrow morning. So let's go back to the map and I'm going to show you how this unfolds looking at the guidance. Okay, so we're going to jump ahead right to 7 o'clock tonight. And I put the arrows on here showing what the low-level flow is doing. And so you can see the cold air is getting pushed in this direction. We're starting to see some moisture show up down there. Now, I'm going to go through time. I'm going to remove those arrows just because I think they clutter the picture. And we'll go hour by hour. So this is 7 p.m. tonight, okay? We'll go slowly. I'll go 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. tonight. We're starting to see some moisture move in. Now, notice some pink. Now, pink means mixed precipitation, either ice, sleet, or a mixture of something, not one type of precipitation type. And so we'll go through time, and notice it's mainly green over Charlotte. We're not seeing a lot of ice, but it doesn't mean that couldn't be on elevated surfaces. I'll go to about 1 o'clock in the morning. So this is 1 o'clock in the morning. Notice the pink up in here, and this is the area of biggest concern. Remember, right in here. I don't think we'll see any issues at all around Charlotte based on what I'm seeing right now. So this is 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. We'll stop it right here. So 5 a.m. seems to be when I think the worst of it will be going on. And you can see how spotty this is. The ice is really spotty. It's those spots that hold on to the cold air. Cold air is heavy and dense. It likes to hug the ground. And so it seeks out the lowest spot. So if you live in a sheltered valley where the cold air can hang on for a little bit, it'll take a while for that area to warm up. And that's where you're likely going to see the biggest risk of ice. But you can see for most of the Charlotte metro area, this is not a big deal. It's this area right in here where we've got the biggest concerns. And I'll show you a couple forecast sites here real quickly. This is what the NOAA or the Weather Service is going. Look how spotty it is even on their forecast where they issued the advisory. You can see how there's a bunch of holes in here because the lakes are going to be warm enough to keep the surface warm. The city, the urban heat island will help us. So that's why you're seeing these urban centers and lakes kind of keep the ice at bay. And look at the amounts. These are tiny amounts. The SREF, which is a guidance I look at, which is the kind of a mean of all the parameters we look at, it's even less bullish for anything around in Piedmont. It's really confined to the mountains and the foothills. So again, this is the area I think where biggest concern is a light glaze. And as far as timing is concerned, this is mainly along Interstate 40. I don't think there'll be any concerns in the Charlotte area. It's really once you get up to Interstate 40 and north, that's where we're going to have issues. I think starting around 3 a.m.-ish to about 10 a.m.-ish, if those are actually terms, you can see, and I don't have these really high threats. I have them kind of in our low end here, with this being the highest. So overall, folks, I think this is a small event. I don't see any power outages. I don't see widespread road issues. But remember, it only takes just a little bit of ice on the right part of a bridge for you to have issues. So it's just something to give you a heads up that tomorrow morning, if you're traveling in those areas I'm talking about and you're going over a bridge, make sure you're not jerking the wheel, slamming the brakes on, accelerating, going too fast. Just drive with caution. And if you're nervous at all, just wait it out, because this is going to be very short. It's going to move in and out really quickly and be gone, because once it turns to rain, it's going to be a miserable cold rain all day tomorrow. And I'll show you how this becomes a miserable rain during the day today. You could see the ice moves out, and it's just periods of rain and cold, drizzly, misty, downpours at times, and temperatures only in the 40s. This is going to be a miserable day tomorrow. So as nasty as ice is in the morning, it moves out so quickly, and it just becomes a miserable cold rain. And the reason this becomes a cold rain so quickly, I showed this video last night, and I posted to my Facebook pages. If we don't have high pressure over the Northeast, if that high doesn't stay here to supply cold air, freezing rain is a self-limiting process. And what I mean by that is, when you freeze water, you have to take heat out of the water. That heat's got to go somewhere. In this case, it goes into the atmosphere, and it actually causes the air temperature to warm up above freezing. Now, you can keep freezing rain going if you're constantly resupplying that cold air. And that's why where that high pressure is key. Remember, that high was up here early, but then it's moving off to the east. If that high stays anchored, we call these parent highs. If the parent high stays anchored up in this area and keeps pumping down the cold air, then this stays iced the entire time. That's how we get our big ice storms around here. But the thing about, we call this latent heat release. When you freeze water, you have to remove heat from it. It's the complete opposite of boiling water. You put water on the stove, you crank up the heat. As long as you keep adding heat, the water gets hotter and hotter until it boils. If you shut the heat off, guess what happens? The water starts to cool. In this case, if you shut off the supply of cold air, the freezing process stops. And that's what's happening here. This is also why, and someone pointed this out on my page, and I should have said this, this is why in the spring, when we talk about orange farmers and strawberry farmers spraying their crop with water, and you see the ice, you see this on videos all the time on the news, people mistakenly think that has to do with ice insulating the plant. Ice is not an insulator, folks. What they're doing, the farmers are taking advantage of this right here on your screen. They're spraying water on the plant. The water is freezing and the heat is coming out of the water. Some of it's going into the air, but some of it's going into the plant to keep the plant above freezing and keep it from getting frost or freeze damage. So that's why they do this. This is a cool science thing of latent heat. If you ever want to teach your kids about latent heat, this is a prime example of how this works in the atmosphere and freezing rain. While it is a really interesting and messy setup, it's also a self-limiting process unless you're adding more cold air. So that's what's happening tomorrow. Probably the minorest of minorest events we could have for the winter. We will have more. Trust me, this pattern stays active for the rest of the month. And of course, I will post about it if something should happen. Have a great Thursday, everybody.